right, guys, so this is a comprehensive stool test called the GI MAP test. I run this for all new patients, and this test gives us a wealth of data that essentially shows us hidden areas of dysfunction. It shows us where the gut is breaking down, where it needs the most support. And as the practitioner, it really helps me to focus on doing the right things in the right order. So this is different from diagnostic testing. I'll go into that a little bit, like endoscopies, colonoscopies, CT scans. This is more of a functional test that evaluates the function of your gut, various sections of your gut, and things like your microbiome and potential infections. So the test is broken down by different sections. On page 1 here, we see pathogens. Pathogens are potential infections in the gut. Now, there are 3 types. There's bacterial, parasites, and viruses that this test looks at. And you may recognize some of the words on the screen here, like C. diff, E. coli, salmonella, and so on. Moving on to page 2, and this is an actual patient's test result, so I have the name blacked out here. But you see on page 2, this patient has H. pylori, known as Helicobacter pylori. This is a common stomach-based bacteria that turns the stomach more alkaline instead of acidic. That's very problematic for digestion and causes things like maldigestion and malabsorption, while also opening up the door for things like SIBO and dysbiosis. Moving on, we have your good gut bacteria called your microbiome. And these are some of the more important families that should be populating your gut that serve numerous important roles, such as breaking down your food and producing vitamins such as your B and K vitamins, regulating immune system function, regulating neurotransmitter production, and just serving numerous important beneficial roles in your digestion. Next, we have what's called your opportunistic or overgrown microbes. These are not bad guys like on the first page. They're not infections. Like the name sounds, they're called opportunistic because these things will overgrow if given the opportunity to. Particularly, things that open the doorway for this overgrowth are things like antibiotics, toxins in our diet and lifestyle, malfunctions in things like our stomach, pancreas, liver, and gallbladder, and anyone eating the toxic standard American diet. Now, it's important to point out that these bacteria overgrowth, you see the word dysbiosis here, that means imbalanced bacteria. These things are big time toxin producers. So you see these numbers here in the red. These bacteria, when they get to high levels, produce endotoxins. And the endotoxins produced by these bacteria inside your gut drive inflammation. They drive things like leaky gut, food sensitivities, cramping, pain, gas, and many other GI type issues. Moving down, we see a fungal and yeast category, looking at things like candida and other types of yeasts. This test looks at viruses and also an extensive parasite list here. Now, lastly, we're going to look at some various intestinal health markers, and this patient had a lot of these things positive. The first section for steatocrit and elastase has to deal with gallbladder and liver function and also the pancreas. So steatocrit, you see he's in the yellow for this. That's a measure of undigested fat in the stool, telling us that this person is not digesting their fat. And the elastase here, also in the yellow, tells us that this patient has poor pancreas function. This also secondarily tells us a lot about poor stomach acidity. All right, we have markers that tell us if a person is constipated and recirculating old toxins from their bowels back into their bloodstream, called beta-glucuronidase. We look at things like blood in the stool. We look at immune system activity, secretory IgA. This patient's very high for that, telling us that the overgrowth in his gut are producing a lot of toxins that are activating his immune system. And we also have markers that look at things like gluten sensitivity and the potential for food allergies via a white blood cell activation called eosinophils. Last 2 things. There's an inflammation marker called calprotectin, and this is high in cases where the colon and the bowels are inflamed. And then lastly, if you've ever wondered if you have leaky gut, there's a marker called zonulin. This tells us in black and white about a person's intestinal permeability, and as you could tell, this patient's case is positive for that. So look, can diagnostic testing still be helpful? Yes, things like CT scans, colonoscopies, endoscopies, those are called diagnostic tests, and their job is to rule out or rule in a condition. However, I can't tell you how many patients I've worked with who have had those tests done and they come back and say, you know what, my doctor said my tests are normal. So the tests are normal, but the patient still knows that intuitively that something is wrong. They know they still don't feel well. That's where the functional tests can come in and show hidden areas of dysfunction, showing things like the health of your microbiome and any potential hidden infections or dysfunctions in organ groups. Now look, here's what I hope you take home from this, is that ultimately testing is great, but taking action on your test results is ultimately what's going to change your life. So if you would like to learn more on that approach, not just the testing, but the actions that I've used and the things that I've taught to hundreds of patients on how to regain their health and get back to living healthy, fulfilling lives. I've done a free training. You can access this simply by clicking the button beneath this video. Watch it. It can change your life, and I'll see you inside. So thanks a lot for watching. Have a great day.